Hello, everyone, or one, well, however many listeners there are, whether it is one or 5 or 10 even. That would be very high, 10. I believe my record so far, considering the numbers that my earlier podcasts got, I don't think I've ever gotten past like 5 at the absolute most. So yeah, it's been a long time since the last podcast I made, and I scrapped it, the original FC Westmen podcast. Why? Because it wasn't natural. I was stuck to the format, and I wasn't really enjoying it, to be honest. And it just didn't feel like it was free flowing, or it just felt like I was having to make up more and more content just to get up to the 40 minutes or whatever it was that I required for the podcast to be the time I required for the podcast to be in terms of minutes. So now this time, this is the Westmen Rebooted podcast. And I'm not sure actually about the name yet. Well, I'm sure that it's Westmen Rebooted, but whether I have like pod or podcast on the end of the name, or if it's just Westmen Rebooted, but then it's not exactly clear that it's a podcast if someone new trembles upon it. So, I'm not sure yet. If you're listening to this and you have an opinion on this, then do make sure to put down a comment and say what you think the name should be. But Westmen Rebooted podcast. I think those are the main contenders for the name. Now, this Westmen Rebooted, this new form of the podcast, this won't have a format. This will be natural. No segment of 15 minutes for 4x 15 minutes per episode, and I talk about this and talk about that, and no, absolutely not. That's out of order as far as I see. I have nothing against scripted podcasts that have preset segments and full scripts and that, but it's just not the right format for me, at least with this podcast. So it's really I was stuck to the format. That's the thing. So that's why I'm not going with the format. I'm experimenting. It's not certain that I'll put out 15 episodes with this non-format podcast. Let me just take a bit of water here. Sorry if it made an unpleasant noise. So yeah, I'll try to keep this as natural as possible. I won't have any sort of paper with me. Well, I was lying there. I already have a paper, but that was just so that I remember what I wanted to say in terms of why I scrapped the earlier podcast, or rather the format. It's still essentially the same podcast. It's the same channel. But it's sort of not. I'm rebranding it, the Westmen Rebooted, because it's a completely different podcast actually. Because it's there's no format. There was a format, and an awfully stubborn format at that in the FC Westman podcast. So I want to get out of that. I want to completely change the feeling and all. So I don't have any subjects ready what to talk about on a paper, but maybe in my head. Like I thought I might do some tactical pondering at times, for Everton as an Evertonian, of course. I might, say what I think we should do for the next match, or in general what we should do with the tactics and perhaps in the transfer market, how we should do. what we should do rather, and then also fancy football tips. Of course, club is at a halt right now as they are developing it, and next season, as it stands, I'll probably have some club tips, in shorter forms, perhaps YouTube Shorts, as they are quite popular now. And unlike, actually podcasts are quite popular, but that's, it's quite difficult for me to make this podcast popular because, well, it's just I have no platform really. And I don't know if I really care honestly about whether it is very successful or not, but rather I just want to enjoy it, and yeah. So fancy football tips, club next season, FPL, perhaps even this season. But in the podcast now, some of the tips will be on the podcast. But now I don't know then if and when I start to make the shorts videos, how it affects my podcasts, how it affects the length of the podcast. If I take some stuff out of the podcast and move it into shorts, for example, the tips, FPL tips, club tips. If I stop doing them on the podcast, it might cut the 10 minutes of the podcast, and that's it. Then I don't know if it really matters. It's easier to access a short video of 30 seconds to look for FPL tips rather than listen to a 35-minute podcast. Well, I don't know how long these podcasts are going to be honest. I have no idea. I have no required time now. Because I had like 1 hour required last time in the FC Westmen podcast. So it actually quite often didn't meet that 1 hour mark. It often was like 40 minutes, 45 minutes of that. So now, well, I'll stop them when I no longer have anything to say. So yeah, I'll just be talking all things football really, and perhaps even some other subjects at times, when maybe football is not on, or it's boring. Well, I think that's a wrong term to use when it's not boring, but rather when there's nothing exactly oh dear significant happening. Now it took a moment for me to dig the word out of my vocabulary, so I'll just throw the paper away because I find my eyes looking at the paper when there is in fact nothing more on it for me to say. It was just the starting bit about the scrapping of the FC Westmen pod and the reforming of the podcast into this Westmen Rebooted. So I'll just throw this away. Now I absolutely could have stopped the recorder for that, to not have you waiting 3 seconds for me to say, but I'm lazy, am I not? Now that's a funny thing, as well, and I found out that you should say, apparently, after saying, say, I'm great, aren't I? You apparently should say it like that instead of I'm great, am I not? But I'm not actually sure because it's not been confirmed. I've not confirmed it yet anywhere. This is not football at all, but I'll still talk about it. So I think that aren't I sounds terribly disgusting, and it sounds grammatically incorrect even though it isn't. But it just sounds awful, and I refuse to use it. I will keep using am I not? Even if it's incorrect, and I think it is correct, because why wouldn't it be? It's completely correct, surely. It's got to be. There's nothing wrong with this, as far as I see. So you can put your thoughts on that as well if you want. Now then, I might as well talk about Everton at this point. We're playing Leeds today. And it's a huge, huge game. Of course, we beat Arsenal 1-0 in Dyche's first game. And then we lost 2-0 to the red side of the city. And, even though we lost 2-0, we didn't play particularly well. I don't think it's really a worrying performance, because each goal we conceded came from an individual error. The first one from Mikolenko, first and foremost, but also Pickford could have done better. The second one was, it was Cody's fault, absolutely. So, I think we'll beat Leeds 1-0 today, and hopefully we can stay up. I think it's pretty much us and Leeds now fighting for the 17th spot. And I think Southampton and Bournemouth are pretty much doomed. They might have a chance still, especially if we crumble. I don't know what I was trying to say there. But anyway, if we start struggling even more and drop down, and Leeds also keep struggling. They've sacked Jesse Marsh, which I think is a brilliant decision for them, unfortunately, because he's an awful manager, to be honest. That's what I think. He should go back to the MLS, where he might actually win something, because I don't think he's good at all. He's also a terrible, terrible complaint. It's like an American club, except that he's not a good manager, really. So, anyway, I hope they won't appoint anyone good. I suppose I won't say anything about who I want them to appoint, because if I do, that's definitely going to happen, so that they appoint the person and then they stay up. So I'm not going to say anything about that. But I hope they don't appoint, they surely can't get Pochettino or Tuchel. But, I don't know. I hope they don't appoint Marcelinho, because he's a very good coach. Honestly, he was my second option after Marcelo Bielsa, but to be honest, I did not want Sean Dyche at all, but he's proven me wrong so far in everything he said, and also the results, the performances in his first two games. I think I don't think we could have expected 3 points from Arsenal at home and Liverpool away. And when we appointed Dyche, I immediately listened to his appearance on I believe it was High Performance podcast or something like that. A very good podcast. Well, that was the only episode I've listened to, but it was very good. And I've also watched his video at the Coach's Voice, or rather the Coach's Voice video with him. And I got to say, watching and listening to those, my perspective of him, my opinion of him changed. But then, to be honest, that would probably change of most managers who I don't think very fondly of. So I still don't think that he is the right appointment for long term for us. But short term, I think it's spot on. If he keeps us up, it's great. In terms of new stadium, certainly, If we go down, I don't know what that would mean for the new stadium, and it's well underway, the construction of it, and it's probably going to happen anyway. But if we go down and we have to put that money into the stadium, then I wonder what it means to the other parts of other costs. Signing players. How much can we put to signing players if we have to put hundreds of millions into the new stadium? Can we sign anyone at this point? At that point, if we go down and we still have to build a new stadium until it's ready, it's a lot of money we'll still have to put in, surely. So that could potentially be a disaster if we go down and all of my money goes to the stadium. Then I guess we'd have to sell our best players and replace them with players who are not as good, and eventually we'd have a squad that is not good enough for an established Premier League team. Even if we got promoted, we would not probably, stay up, and we could possibly become a JoJo club like Norwich and Fulham. Well, Fulham look to be escaping that now, but we have seen lately, in recent years, when Leeds got promoted, they finished 8th first. Then after that, they become pretty much a relegation contender each season. It's like their third season up now, I think. Or is it the second? Third, surely. Yeah, third. Because in 2021, they just about somehow finished above us, Everton. And I don't remember how they did last season. Oh, well, yeah, of course, they were in the relegation battle last season. So, yeah, indeed. After the first season, they've always been relegation contenders. And Sheffield United, of course, finished, 8th, 9th in the first season in the Prem. And then next season, rock bottom. So I think Fulham might struggle next season, because it's clearly a what's the word? A certain kind of a pattern, not a repeating pattern is the right word. It's not a continuing pattern. It's a, oh dear, I don't know why my English is so or my English vocabulary is so rusty now. I can't think of the word, or is it just my memory? I don't know what it is. What the problem is I have with finding the right words. But in fact, I'll have a quick pause and Google it. Apparently it is repeating pattern after all, but I'm not sure. I just didn't feel right saying repeating pattern when I said it. So I think there is another pair of words for that. It's pattern. Yes, definitely the second word, but I'm not sure what the first word is. Anyway, I think Fulham will struggle next season and be in a relegation fight, probably relegation battle, not relegation fight. Well, it's the same thing, fight and battle, isn't it? Really, but it's just not often that anyone refers to the relegation battle as regulation. Certainly not a regulation fight, but a relegation fight. And talking of regulations, regulations. What's the absolute spot-on way to pronounce it? Regulations or regulations? Regulations. Probably regulations. So yeah, Chelsea spending an awful amount of money after finding a loophole in the FFP. So it's FFP regulations. Yeah. That's why it was a nice bridge to this, which I absolutely hadn't planned out, by the way. This is the beauty of this non-format of our formats. That's I can just when something pops up in my head, I just talk about it rather than looking what I have written on a paper. and then going by that, because that's not exactly creative, is it? And it's unnatural speech at that point, and I think you can hear it's completely different by talking now. It's natural. It's I don't have to think what I say. I just say pretty much exactly what comes to my head. But there's a small sort of a sensor that 3 seconds slow mode, you could say, like in Discord, in the I don't remember what channel it is in the club Discord. I think is it the other projects channel where the slow mode is on. I'm pretty sure it's a pretty dead channel anyway. So yeah. Anyway, Chelsea spending an awful amount of money. Who did they sign? Mikhailo Mudryk. They signed Enzo Fernandez. They signed Noni Madueke. Who else was there? Benoit Badiachil. There was I don't really remember. David Fofana, yes, the striker who doesn't seem really good, to be honest. To me, the first performance he made. Is it making a performance or doing a performance, or is he either having a performance? I'm not sure about that. I'll be thinking of that maybe if I remember. Well, I might listen to this before publishing it. Why do I say my? Charlie, every podcaster should listen to the podcast before publishing it. Yes, I agree, but I'm a lazy bastard, so yeah. What could be the next subject? Nothing right on my head, but I'm still not going to quite end it here, yeah, because it's 22 minutes. That's way too short for a podcast. That would be like a normal YouTube video. Well, back like 5 years ago. Nowadays they're like 5 minutes at most, because the attention spans of people is just so much worse because of TikTok and YouTube Shorts. I myself am a big consumer of podcasts and longer content. So for me, it's personally, I think it's a shame that the shorter formats of content is taking over now, especially because I like doing longer content as well. Not that I'd ever be able to grow this channel into a multi-thousand subscriber channel, but if I get a couple dozens of subscribers, I think that would be nice. I had 70 subscribers on my first channel. That was Finnish. So in Finnish, the videos were in Finnish. So it's actually, there are pros and cons in doing videos in Finnish and English, because again, this isn't football, I know, but does all that I say here have to be about football? I don't necessarily think so, because there are so many fully football podcasts. Do we need also strict football podcasts? Maybe this is, if I just say what comes to my mind, even if it's not about football. Of course, the central points are about football. Now, I've forgotten what I was about to say. This is why I shouldn't have started to explain again. I mean, obviously all of you know that whatever I was about to say was not about football. But, oh dear, do I genuinely have to go back and listen to what I said before I can continue this? I know what I was about to say. I guess so. Well, I'll take a small pause and hear that. Now, yes, of course, I was about to talk about the pros and cons of making YouTube videos in Finnish and English. Now, of course, in English, it's a huge audience that can see and understand your videos, billions of people, whereas there are about 6 million Finnish speakers. So that's quite the difference in that. But then also there's of course so much more English, so much more content in English, and so much less content in Finnish. That sort of balances it out. But yeah, so yeah, I got to about 70 subscribers in like 3, 4, 5 years of making videos in Finnish. Let's see how committed I'll be to this channel now. There's been a few videos, but it's completely different content that I used to do on the Finnish channel. It was gaming videos of a sort, and in fact vlogs. It was in fact everything. It was just, yeah, it was completely free, just like this podcast is supposed to be, and hopefully will stay that way, and yeah. So next, what should I talk about? Well, maybe I shall leave it to here, because this is 26.5 minutes. It's almost half an hour, and this is sort of an introduction episode to the Westmen reboot. Now I'll try to get, after this episode, 1 or possibly 2 episodes before the end of the Premier League season, and then after the season I'll make a podcast where the biggest part will be reviewing my predictions on this current season of football in the first episode of FC Westmen podcast. So I'm awaiting that. I don't remember all my predictions, so it'll be very interesting, at least for me, to look back at those and see if I got something right or if I was completely useless in making those predictions. But yeah, so 1 or 2 episodes before the end of the season still. I'm not promising anything, though. Again, the FC Westman podcast was supposed to be strictly every 3 weeks, but then, there were ever 2 episodes, and there was like, I don't remember, 5 weeks apart, so I wasn't able to really follow the instructions I had given myself. So I'll just see when I feel like recording a podcast, and when I can record a podcast, and I'll do it. But maybe like once a month is, well, not quite. That's maybe a bit of an over exaggeration. What's an over exaggeration? Surely exaggeration itself is quite over the top already. So well, that is exaggeration indeed. So yeah, not once a month, but once or twice before the end of the season after this episode is what you can expect. So I'm not promising anything else but 1 episode before the end of the season and 1 episode at the end of the season. I hope this is going to work out better than the old formats, and I believe it is. I certainly enjoyed it more to record this than the old formats. So let me know in the comments or on the Discord server or club what you thought about this podcast, if you made it through all the way, the 30 minutes. It is now almost closing in on. But I think that's it all. Bye for now.